Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Victory Leaders Lounge. It's a podcast that just basically highlights the success of other people so that other people know that they can do it, that it's possible, that people from all walks of life can become successful, and especially veterans when they transition. I love to show them that it can happen, and it doesn't matter what you did or what you want to do, you can make it happen if you want to. So today I have a guest, Shawn Welsh. He's awesome. He has his own podcast. We're going to let him do his quick introduction here in a couple of minutes, but I just want to make sure that I highlight that my book, the Warrior Leadership coaching book that gives you the boot camp version in a journey perspective, from a journeyman's perspective, on how to start a coaching business, and it kind of walks you through the process. Also, I don't have a physical copy of that one yet because I just published it, so I haven't gotten the hard copy. But also, there's my old one, Why Organizations Should Develop Their Leaders. It's a pocket guide. Get it if you're interested. Otherwise, there's a course coming out pretty quick that highlights both of those things, and it's called the Warrior Leadership Coaching Certification Course, and it teaches you how to become a coach and start the business as a coach. All that is done. All the gaggy stuff to talk about my business is out of the way. So now we can talk to Shawn. Shawn, thank you for coming on my podcast, brother. How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great, JJ. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a huge honor, and just absolutely love what you're doing, especially trying to teach, through coaching and all that. That's so important to do.
Well, I feel like it's a skill that most people experience or they dip their toes into, but they don't really understand how important it is to the development of your people, especially in an organization. But thank you. It's hard work, and I appreciate what you do. The Vet S.O.S podcast, man, you're bringing all these veterans to the surface. These organizations that support vets, you're bringing them to the surface, and you're really kind of helping people understand what that transition is like and what resources are out there for them. And I'm sure there's maybe more to the mission than I'm getting out of it, because I'm just an observer of the podcast. But I would love it if you would give us an introduction and give us a rundown of what you do and what, brings your heart into it.
Absolutely. And so with Vet S.O.S, it truly is a passion project. It was something that started, I don't want to say by accident. I had a mentor, or I have a mentor. I have several mentors. But a mentor of mine pushed me into podcasting. It wasn't something that was even on my radar, not something I was thinking about doing. I was focused on transitioning out of the military, and podcasting wasn't one of those things. And but he pushed me and helped me get started. My original co-host, Mark, was his partner and co-host for the show that they've been running for several years. So he came on board to help me get started and teach me the ropes and, really help us get going. And it's been a huge blessing. It's one of those things that I have so much fun with it. It's talking to people. We're talking to, I'd say probably 75% of the guests are veterans, where the other 25 maybe weren't veterans, but they work in the veteran space. And so you already have that camaraderie, and there's jokes about services and jobs and things like that. And it's so much fun to do, and then we're learning so much as we do it. And really, the guiding principle behind the whole thing is we want to educate. Each one of my co-hosts has been an enlisted service member, just like me. Two of them have been senior non-commissioned officers like me. And, our bread and butter is training and educating. And that's what we love to do. So it's just such a natural fit. And so we go through this and really we're just trying to help veterans, service members, and spouses learn about the resources that are out there for them. And that's all it's about. We want to bring a little bit of that human touch. So we have the guests start with their transition story and tell how that went, or how they got working with veterans if they weren't military. And then we go into the organization, and hopefully through that, people are going to be able to learn about the different organizations and figure out if it's something that they want to do or not do. And it's just been this huge blessing in my life. And, it truly is a passion project and something we're really proud of as we continue to grow.
Isn't it interesting how you can be passionate about something and dip your toes into an area that may or may not be very comfortable, but it becomes something that just fills your heart. And, honestly, it may be a passion project for you now, but a podcast actually provides a living for a lot of people. And we may not, my podcast doesn't provide me a living. That's not why I do it. I don't know if yours does. And if that's part of the reason why you do it or not, but I'll tell you what, just like you, I meet so many wonderful people, and that fills me up. And, just to know that there are so many people out there that can go from whatever they were doing to starting something brand new and making it successful, whether that's 5,000 a month or maybe just filling a need for their heart, or, making it a full-time career, then, that's really kind of the reason why I do what I do. And so to know that yours has become so successful, I mean, I've been following you for a while now, and I'll be honest with you, just the amount of followers that you have gained on your page. I mean, it just in the year that I've been following you, it's gone. I'm not gonna say what it is now and what it was then, but it's a lot more now than it was then. And some of the people that I followed that you have on your podcast, or are co-hosts on your podcast, they're also people that I could look at as a potential mentor. So you have such a wonderful group of people that you have in your network. So good job.
I appreciate that. And honestly, you have to attribute that to the community. The fact that when I first started it, I had some of the biggest names in transition come on the show early on. And it's just because they cared, and they wanted to support what we were trying to do, and they wanted to get the message out. And, so we've been blessed in that sense as well. And, I'll go back to the success piece. Success, varies depending on how you measure it, correct? So we're not making money on the podcast. I'm not saying I'm against it. We are definitely looking for sponsors to help with expenses and stuff. And if any of your listeners want to come with a Joe Rogan contract, I'm all about it. I'll gladly do that if you want to. And just like I'm sure you wouldn't mind a Joe Rogan contract.
I wouldn't mind. I'm not necessarily looking for it like you, but if something falls in my lap, I'm not going to spit at it either.
The true measure, though, for us of success, because when we started this, the whole goal was, if we can help one person find something in transition, then it's all been worth it. And we're getting those calls now, those emails saying, hey, I watched this episode, or this episode helped me. And, you start to meet some people at different events and stuff. And they're like, yeah, I watch your show. I follow your show, and we really like it. And, it's kind of surreal. You're like, really? I'm just, some schmuck living down in Florida, but the fact is they like what we're doing, and we're finally getting validation that we're helping people, and that really means the world.
Yeah. And success, you just like you said, it takes many different forms, and some people like you and I, we served a career in the military, and so success probably looks a little bit different to us than it does to a lot of other people. I'd like to have a successful, super awesome echelon front style business maybe at some point, but right now I'm happy just helping people. And like you, this podcast, it's just a connector opportunity. I'm a gatherer of resources just like you. And the veteran population, they're oftentimes, although there are all the resources in the world, people don't always make a concerted effort to actually find the people that need the resources. And if you do that, and you have a podcast like yours, or a podcast like mine, or a podcast like Jack Tilley's, or something like that can literally point them in the direction of their resources, because everyone, doesn't matter how much money they have, oftentimes the government will provide one of these fancy things to you no matter what. So giving them the resources, it helps everything. And I've seen some people, just as a gatherer of resources, just like you, that once they have them, they go from damn near living on the streets to now they have an apartment and full-time employment. And, sometimes they start even dating again. They just start building all their confidence back up. And to me, that's better than anything else in the world. If I'm able to help that one person, that with all the hard work that I've done, just like you, then I've really kind of succeeded at what I'm trying to do.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know when it happened, but there became a point where I became a connector. Where initially, I'm just gathering connections and resources and everything. And the next thing you know, I'm like, hey, yeah, I know this guy, or check out this resource, or do this. And you start, when you connect with somebody, you're not even thinking about, hey, what's in it for me? It's like, what can I help them with, and how can I direct them? And, so I can't point to a date and time that it happened. It just sort of happened over time. And, it's a great mindset. It's really cool to think about that. And, you start talking about confidence and everything. We just interviewed a organization called Wounded Veteran Relief Fund. They're based here in Florida, and they have a big dental program. And on the show, we show a before and after photo of someone in their messed up mouth in the finished product. And Tammy Martin, the spokesperson who came on the show, she starts talking, and she got real emotional about this. And you can see why, because they're changing lives. Literally, think about how much you smile, or maybe you don't smile because of a certain reason, and then you just take that going from having a messed up mouth to actually having, beautiful teeth. And then you're smiling, your confidence growing, you're applying for jobs, you're not scared of that first impression from your mouth. And, it's just little resources like that you're like, man, these guys are making a huge impact. This is awesome.
Heck yeah, brother. That's a win. That gets one of these. So, and it makes perfect sense that you started turning into a connector. To me, all veterans, if you serve for more than a couple of years, some of these guys are out there and they served a couple of years and then they're done. But you and I served most of our adult lives, and we learn. It's like inherent that if you have a resource, that you freaking share it. If somebody is working on something and somebody that can help that person succeed, well, you give them that person's contact information and you connect them. It's a natural thing. I don't think people understand, the amount of value that a veteran brings into a workplace, just because we value connecting people and serving people's needs to the utmost ability, and making sure that that not just your mission gets accomplished, but their mission gets accomplished. Veterans are awesome people.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, the best job I had where I really understood that concept was the operations NCO for the garrison, where I was in charge of, anything that had to do with the garrison operationally, and this was in Camp Humphreys in Korea during the transition from everybody from Seoul and everything. So we had our hands in a lot of things, and you quickly realize, that the more people and you're able to share resources, point people to the right people, how much faster things can happen. And that job alone really showed me the importance of sharing the resources you have, and being able to teach other people. And I remember moving from that job to another job, still in operations, but I had a young sergeant working for me, and he was amazed how many people I knew. I'm like, it's not about being popular or anything, because I don't think that way, but I know if I want to do this on the garrison, I have to go to this department, and I probably know this or this, and so trying to teach him who to go to, and just to make their life easier, especially to do the military stuff, and just getting them to understand that, hey, just because you have a resource, you're going to get a lot further if you're sharing that resource with the responsible people.
Yep. Well, that's why NCOs are the backbone of the military.
Yep.
By the way, NCOs are non-commissioned officers, to all you civilian people out there that don't already know that. That's anybody that you would consider a sergeant or a chief or whatever the case may be. It depends on the branch of service that they served in. But, that's what we do. And I was an NCO for most of my career. I finished as a warrant officer, but I chose
we
warrant
won't hold
officer.
that against you.
Well, thank you. Well, I chose warrant officer because I didn't want to lose all those valuable connections that I made throughout the years with all my NCO counterparts. But I did want to tap into, that senior level and start connecting with all those officers as well, because I feel like there's value in that. And I was able to bring those connections together. And I think that I think more than a master of deployment, which is what I was as a mobility warrant officer, I was probably a master of connecting people with the proper resources, because I had the officers and the NCOs in my back pocket.
Yeah, you can't really hide as a warrant in that job.
No. Anytime somebody is going somewhere, they are looking for you.
Yep.
You don't have to look for anybody. They're going to be looking for you.
Yeah, and, the thing is, I loved working with good warrants. The ones who, I mean, they have that expertise.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter. I did 20 years. I never changed MOSs, so I was the same, Intel analyst. But I didn't really do Intel like the last half of my career, because then I'm a senior non-commissioned officer and I'm doing leadership stuff and managing people, and so you still need those warrants in there helping with that expertise that you wind up losing a lot of as NCOs transition up the chain. And so it's having those strong warrant corps is just imperative, especially the fields like mine and being Intel.
Well, leadership, you mentioned that word, and I always love that word. That's what I built my whole business around, Victory Leadership Coaching. It's because, you don't have to be a master of a skill, but if you can influence the people that you're working with to enjoy, not just do the work, but enjoy what they're doing and be willing to come together as a team to make it happen, you'll learn how to help everybody along the way. And so that's one thing that we kind of mastered as senior non-commissioned officers, especially in the military, because it's not about what you know, it's about what your team can accomplish. And so another reason why NCOs are the backbone of the military is because, we just become a master of that. And we train together every month to make sure that everybody understands the same stuff.
Oh yeah, that's completely true. And then you start getting into things like leadership style, and there's the way the military's set up, especially the Army, is it's up or out.
Yep.
So you have to make sergeant, and unfortunately, not everybody is a leader.
No.
And I wish we still had the spec ranks, because I think with certain MOSs, certain jobs like Intel, you could probably benefit a lot from having guys that don't necessarily want to be in leadership positions, but they love doing the work.
Sure.
But the whole argument there is you have the warrant corps, but you still got to do so many years as an NCO and have good evals, and some people aren't great leaders when it comes to that side of the ball. And it's unfortunate, but also you get into the different types of it's not leadership, but like authority, where you have that expertise or expert authority, where you are that subject matter expert and you are given a lot of power because of that. But it's also expected that you know the answer and you're able to do that. And then of course you have positional power and things like that. But it's fascinating to sit down and get in the weeds on that and look at how different things impact different aspects of the job. And because a lot of people think, "Oh, I got the title, so I'm a leader." Not so much.
Yeah.
You gotta have people following you. You gotta be able to influence them and motivate them.
Well, you're right. Because I have a lot of HR people in my audience, it might be good to unpack that just a little bit on the veteran side of things, because, when it comes to people and hiring veterans, they seem to think that we're very rigid in our way of thinking. And when you watch the movies, it's all about the drill sergeants and the people screaming at each other and all that other stuff. And really, the military does a very good job at, and I can't speak for all the branches, but I can definitely speak for the Army because I served my entire career there, just like you. And in that, we focus on servant leadership as a way of living, because we want to reduce suicide rates. We want to make sure our teams trust each other enough to where if we go down range, we can depend on people to our left and right to not only do their job so the mission gets complete, but when push comes to shove, we need to know that person has our back when whoever the enemy is, they decide to come knocking at our door. And so, it's very important. Trust, serving others and building trust is probably the most important thing that a veteran, a senior veteran, when they transition out of the military, can bring to a work environment. And it's because of everything you just said. It's not just about bossing people around and making sure the work gets done. That's part of it, but that's not what we focus on. We focus on making sure the people feel valued in what they're doing.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot in what you just said too. So trust. Military people have a hard time with trust. When they come out of the military, because you come from an area where everybody looks the same, everybody acts the same. And everybody knows what the mission is, and your goal is to accomplish the mission. And so there's some inherent trust in there when you're part of a unit. So there's definitely trust pieces, and I think those are honest conversations that veterans should be having with their civilian managers, and let them know, because one of the things that I did when I was transitioning out of the military is I actually took a couple different uh, personality slash like behavioral type tests to learn a little bit more about myself.
Sure.
And so like when I was in the Army, I was a master resiliency trainer. I love the values and action survey. I think it's an amazing tool. And it's one of those tools that, like most people, when I got my results, I'm like, this is BS. This isn't right. But when you sit down and you look at it and you have somebody who actually knows what they're talking about go through it with you, you realize, oh my goodness, and so the that was the first one. And I try to get people to do that as much as possible, and understand that if you search values in action, you're going to come up with one that's online, it's free, but it's only like 50 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the University of Pennsylvania, do their free version, but it's like 200 and something questions. You're going to get much more in the weeds, and the results to me are going to be a lot more accurate.
You're right.
It still comes out with the same 24 character strings, but you're going to get much more fidelity, I think, out of the other one. It takes a little bit of time, but very, very valuable in my opinion. The DISC assessments for your personality, that's huge. You figure out, what your personality is, and then you start understanding how you best communicate and how people communicate with you. And that is huge, especially going into the civilian sector. So I'm a high D. I've always been one of those guys, the old military saying, we don't need to tell them how we made the sausage. I don't want to know how you made the sausage. I just want to know that it's made, period.
Right.
That's just who I am, and so people go into detail and try. I'm like, my eyes roll back in my head. It's nothing personal against them. It's just that's not how my brain works. That's not how my personality works. If you are doing something, just tell me it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And then we check that off the list. We move on to the next thing. But I also know that if I let my full D out, I'm going to hurt some feelings.
Oh yeah.
You got to learn how to communicate with people, and also make them understand, hey, I appreciate the detail you're trying to give me, and try to explain to them why it's not working, without hurting their feelings. Because if they're a C, then they want to give you all the detail. They want to just pack it in there. And then you got the I's that are all the social butterflies and everything. And my I was like negative, which is funny since I'm a podcaster. But what I found is I took the test again after I went to the military influencer conference the first year. My I jumped to number 2. So I was a DI. I'm like, whoa, what happened? And over time, the I drops down a little bit more unless I'm doing a lot of networking. But that showed me that you can impact those things. And then I'm a Maxwell leadership team member. And through the Maxwell DISC assessment, they have a graph that shows you the person you're trying to be, or that you are when you're interacting with people. And if you look at my DISC scale, it flattens out greatly when it comes to my forward facing persona, because that job I talked about in the garrison, where I had to, learn how to deal with all these people and make things happen and all that really helped me understand, how to change the way I talk to people and how I interact with people. And so that was a huge tool to go through and start to understand how those things move and how those things impact how you're interacting with people. And there's so many other great tests out there, but those are 2 that I highly recommend people take.
Oh man. Yeah, those are good ones. Actually, I'm also an advocate of the Master Resiliency Program and that assessment that UPenn gives, because even though I retired as a warrant officer, I spent 4 years as a Master Resiliency training before I made that switch. So I trained thousands of people on that when they were first launching that program. What a great program.
Yeah, it helped me a lot, just with like my personal issues and anger and things like that, and realizing that the impact things were having on you. It's all about positive psychology, and everybody makes fun of Hunt the Good Stuff. That is the number 1 tool in my book. We started doing that at the dinner table when my youngest was probably 2 years old, 3 years old. And it got to the point where when we got home and sat down for dinner, he was the one who initiated. What happened good today, Dad? And it's like, wow, it's so, to me, it's an amazing program.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, that disc assessment that you mentioned, I haven't taken it in about a year, but back then I took it through 2 or 3 different places because I got an equal amount of all the letters. And I thought that was weird. And I thought maybe it was broken the first time, but apparently that means I can adapt to just about any type of conversation in any type of environment. But I don't know, working in a lot of the jobs that I've worked in, I don't necessarily feel that that's always true.
Yeah. That's a fact. It's hard, but I'm telling you, especially if you're a leader, first of all, you need to do that, and so you understand yourself.
Mhm.
But have your team do it. You're
Yes,
going to learn so much about your team and how to better communicate with them and manage them. Unbelievable tool.
I agree. Sometimes tools are great. I'm also a firm believer, and I'm sure you are too, because you worked on the front lines when you were doing stuff in the military. But you know, I'm a firm believer that you go out there and you make an attempt to just have conversations and learn about every single person you work with before you do an assessment like that. Because if you're one of those people that try to lead from the office, you're not taking one of those assessments. It's not going to do a thing for you. Oh,
That's not.
Janita Kennedy's on here. Hi, Janita.
You can't lead from the ivory tower.
Nope.
And I've made those mistakes, just like every other leader. There's been times that I should have been out of the office and I was in the office, and that there's times that you let paperwork get in the way of what you should be doing. And but I remember having conversations like when I first took over as a first sergeant. We had a soldier that was on her way out. She was going to be chaptered, and a conversation turned that whole thing around, realizing that it was really the fact that her spouse was in AIT and was being med boarded, and she was not getting any information. We were overseas, so there was this whole lot of unknown in what was going on. I happen to know the first sergeant, so I reach out to him. Next thing you know, I'm passing information through just a simple email to the first sergeant, and next thing you know, the soldier starts to turn around and get everything back in order. And it was just a simple conversation to find out what was bothering her.
Another example why NCOs are the backbone of the Army. I'm just saying, we make stuff happen because we know who to reach out to, and we don't really hesitate to do it. We gather our resources and we use them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we make mistakes, and I've made a few.
Gosh.
But at the same time, you have to take those mistakes and learn from them and grow. And like I'll have a conversation with somebody, and that's great advice. Like you get great advice from doing stupid things and learning from them. That's how that happens. So.
Yes. Actually, that's how I got my son to stop lying. Is I would tell to him, hey man, don't be afraid to mess up and own it. Those things are opportunities for you to figure out what's right. If you always lie about it, you're never going to be able to figure out what's right.
Absolutely.
Because you got to learn the hard way. We all have to learn the hard way. I still learn the hard way.
Oh,
especially from you guys. You and your sister probably teach me more than I've learned in an entire military career. But we're actually close to the end here, Shawn.
Wow.
So I do 30 minutes, but one thing I always ask people towards the end of the podcast is, what is one thing that you would want to share with a large audience of people, something that's affected you? Maybe some people share a quote, some people share just a common thing that they say to a mass of people, but what's something that you'd like to share with the audience?
Wow. That's a good question. And so many different options there. I will say that my favorite quote is from Abraham Lincoln. It is better to remain silent and thoughtful than open your mouth and remove all doubt. I have many a times removed all doubt by opening my mouth. But it's one of those quotes that I think when you really pay attention to it and just, bite your tongue, there's no need to comment on every single situation and thing that's going on and start to control how you speak and how you talk. Good things can happen, and you can learn a lot more. A lot of people talk about that you got one mouth, two ears. You should be listening more. I'm like, that's a great point too.
Yep.
And so that's my favorite quote, especially when it comes to leadership, because, Abraham Lincoln's a phenomenal example to look at. But the one thing I will leave the audience with, and this is something I talk about with transitioning service members, but I think it applies to everything. John Maxwell once said, don't ever ask directions from someone who's never been there. And that is as true as it gets. Find yourself a mentor, find yourself multiple mentors, build yourself your own personal board of directors in different areas. I have 4 or 5 different personal board of directors for different areas of my life, to help me guide me through different things, because we don't know everything, and don't take advice from people who have never gone where you're trying to go, because they don't know how to get there. They're going to give you advice because, as humans, we're great at giving advice, but find those people who have been to where you want to go and talk to them. They're the ones that are going to help you.
Oh man, great words. And that's so true. I find that, I think, again, I'm going to put this up in front of the screen. This thing right here has caused people to be so impatient. And so one thing that your quote that you shared about that from Abraham Lincoln that really kind of resonates with me is that the younger generation has a hard time with active listening. And it's because they're impatient. They have this thought that they generate sometime in the course of, whether it's before or during what you're saying, that they just want to blurt it out because they don't have the patience to hold it in. But I think if we want to connect with other people and have meaningful conversations, we need to slow our mind down a little bit and take the time to listen to people and understand what they're saying and respond to that, instead of having that selfish need to blurt out right in the middle of what's going on or respond with something that's completely unrelated to what somebody else says. It's a skill that's slowly going away with the younger generation. And I think it's a valuable one to keep in mind. So that quote you gave from Abraham Lincoln really, really does resonate.
Yeah. Active listening. That's an art form now.
Yes.
I've ranked that right up there with this generation's ability to drive.
Well, but that just means as leaders, we need to help them understand what success looks like, so that hopefully that doesn't end up a generational problem all the way down the line.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's where we're at, because during my time in high school, they did away with driver's training. And now we got a generation of people who never learned to drive, teaching people to drive. But that's a whole new podcast. We won't go down that road. I appreciate everything, JJ. This has been phenomenal. It
has been fun. And thank you for all the people that tuned in at the last minute, and for all the comments, Michael, Diggs, Janita, thank you all for being a part of the conversation here. And Shawn, thank you for being a guest. To the audience, if this information resonates with you and you feel like it's valuable to be shared in your audience, please like, subscribe, reshare. But the most important thing, really, and it doesn't matter what platform you're on, is to put a comment below so that we can keep the conversation going. Because if there's something that's important to you, it's probably important to somebody else. So thank you, everybody, for watching. And again, thank you, Shawn, for being a guest. And we'll see everybody next time.